Hello, folks. How's it going? Good day, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm actually super excited to be here today, a bit more excited than last time, I have to admit. That's mainly because my preparation for this stream was a bit shorter than what I would have liked, but we'll see how it goes. Now, to tell people who are watching for the first time or just picking it up, what's going on here. We're building a payment integration for now. So a small little application which integrates with Stripe, a payment provider, and you can do credit card payment with it. If you haven't watched the last episode of the streams, you should probably take the time and watch it because we're going to build up on this application we built in the next couple of episodes. And simply said, we're going to add some features to it. Now, this stream is not just a one-way street. I want it to be a two-way street. So I'm going to take in a second some time to actually look at the chat and the questions. I already saw some questions that have been asked. But in general, what I want to do is I want to not just tell you this is the only way how you have to program stuff. Instead, I want you to act as, well, feedback givers while I'm programming something. So we can talk about why we program something a certain way. And also as some sort of an agile product owner. So if you want to see more tests written in the next episode, then you need to tell me, I want to see more tests written. If you want to talk about security, then we can talk about security. If you want to see something else, then you have to let me know. And just a quick info, if I'm looking straight at the camera, I'm usually coding or having a look at my web browser. If I'm looking away from you to the side, I'm having a look at the chat log. And I just want to give you a quick hello to all the folks from all over the world. I saw guys from Finland, Brazil. It's always nice to see who turns out in the stream. And before we start, the first question I saw, is it possible to get a GitHub repository of the Stripe payment app of the previous session? If you want to see me cover Git more, then yes, I can upload it probably at the end of this session, not today, but in the next couple of days. Git merge rebase, yes, we can talk a bit about Git internals and all that kind of stuff. It's also not a problem. In general, keep it coming. So if you have any questions, if you have any topics, whatever, I'm always going to take some time, every couple of minutes, have a look at the chat. Thank you. The hoodie, yeah, I also like the hoodie, pretty much. And I also have, hopefully he's already here, Philip, a good friend of mine who wanted to answer some questions also. He's got a great website. He's got a great articles and also courses on Spring stuff. So we might see him answer stuff in the chat. Last question, maybe before we begin, Tensun, can you give a short opinion on AOP in certain applications? When would you recommend using that pattern? Can we put that at the very end? And then I'm going to actually, what we're going to do is let's keep coding for like 60 minutes. I'm going to put a timer here. After 60 minutes, roughly, we're going to deploy to production. That's also very important. We're not just going to build a toy application. I want to deploy to production. You should be able to use the app. And then afterwards, we're going to have a couple of minutes of questions, 10, 20 minutes or whatever have you. Now, that being said, let me try and switch my scene and see if you guys can see something. I just want to do a very tiny quick recap of what we had in the last episode. So we ended up with, and you can actually go to the website, you can go to live.marcobela.com and you'll find this tiny, let's say, payment form we built. We built a form, welcome to a transparent software developer. And actually, if you want to support this format and if you like it, then please fill in your real credit card number. Hit the pay button. I really appreciated the guys who supported my last episode and who did it. Keep it coming. Now, that being said, I also got some emails from people saying, Marco, you had the payment form hard-coded to $15 US. And I'd like to think that people obviously like to pay more seeing me code, but no. All kidding aside, there were some people who said, "Why not make the form variable so you can just put in? Everyone can put in whatever amount of money he wants to pay. So $5, $10, $20, $50 doesn't really matter." Yeah. So and that actually makes sense. It's a very it's a good feature request. And it's actually a tricky feature request when it comes to the Stripe integration. But I thought we can do that today. So we're going to turn that here, that fixed amount of $15 into a field. So you can choose yourself what you want to pay, if you want to pay at all. And then later on, what I also wanted to do, and I hope we have the time for that, is to save what we got, what we get, the callbacks, the webhooks from Stripe. I wanted to save them to a database. I wanted to talk about database programming from IntelliJ IDEA, how to create a database, flywheel migration, saving stuff, repositories, database, idempotency, and whatnot. So let's see if I'm quick enough to put everything into these 60 minutes. Right, now, the issue is, and that's from a technical standpoint, I just want to quickly run you through what happened when we go on that page. So you go to that live.markobela page. Actually, let me scratch that. Let me boot up the application locally so we can see what's going on. So I'm just booting up the application. Nothing has changed from last time. So I didn't add any source code. I didn't do anything extra special. So it's all what we had at the end of the last episode. That's why it's so good to have a look at that again. And when I go to localhost 8080, and I actually got some emails from some people saying that they coded the same application, they registered with Stripe, they got it to work, which I was super proud of. That is what I wanted you to do, basically. Follow along with a Stripe account and you're good to go. Now, when you open up that page, localhost 8080, what essentially happens is I have some, let me open it up. We have that JavaScript code. And by the way, that's also a suggestion. There's a ton of JavaScript which we just copy and pasted last episode from the Stripe documentation. If you want to see more JavaScript covered in detail on every line, then submit the pay button. Let me know what you want to see covered, and we're going to cover it in the next episode. But for now, just to quickly run you through it, when we open that localhost 8080 page, we immediately do a post call to an endpoint that we programmed, create payment intent. Remember, Stripe wants you to know how much does a user intend to pay, like 15 euros or $15 or whatever, or $10 or $5. You send a request to Stripe. Stripe sends you back a client secret. And then the user with that client secret in the browser finishes the payment with Stripe. And the payment never touches your server in between. When we look at the create payment controller, and by the way, I gave a talk a couple of days on the IntelliJ support with these URLs. Did you just see how I navigated from the JavaScript file directly into the post mapping? You can see the shortcuts I'm using at the bottom of the screen. Now, we have our controller, and at the moment here it says, well, 15 times 100. So we always create a payment intent for $15 fixed. And what we need to do is basically we need to somehow put into the create payment intent. We need to say, well, the user can specify whatever he wants. So in our JavaScript, we would have, when we do this call here, we actually send a dummy object that was in the Stripe documentation. So we send items, ID, whatever. We actually don't need to send an item ID. That is just dummy code. We need to send some sort of an amount, right? So amount 15, amount 10, amount whatever. Now this would also be fixed. And the thing is, I want the user to be able to put in the amount that he wants to pay, or support this stream, basically like a Patreon support. And then I thought about how we can do this. So we could write some more JavaScript, because essentially we need a new form. We need a new form which says, with a new input field saying, hey, I want to pay $5. And then you say next. And then when you hit next, then you create the payment intent. We could do that with JavaScript. I'm going to do it with Spring MVC. Plain good old HTML pages. Why? Because I want this JavaScript not to change too much, because I don't want to get into JavaScript programming for now. If you want me to see, program some more JavaScript, add some whatever frameworks you like, again, let me know. But for now, what we're trying to pull off is something else. Let me try and explain. What we're going to do is we're going to rename that template to checkout. So this is the last page the user should see in a process of pages when he decides, hey, I want to pay something. And we're just going to copy and paste that template again, clean it up a bit. We don't need Stripe here anymore. We also don't need this here, right? We don't need the client script. I just want to have a new form saying, actually, let me clean everything up here. Welcome to the transparent. Do you want to support this format? Right. Then if you want to support this format, there's a couple of things I want you to put in. You need to put in a email. And I'm just going to create an HTML skeleton. So I just want to have a quick HTML skeleton, not hooked up to anything. I just want to see that the page is basically coming up right. And then we can think about adding the controller, adding the Java code, adding validations and all that we need to do. But for now, just have that. Then we're going to have an amount field. So if you say, well, I want to have like 10 euros or whatever, then just put in the amount. And also, by the way, if you want to put in a feature request, right? So if you submit the form and say, hey, I'm going to give you $5 or whatever, that you talk about JavaScript, then put in JavaScript in that field. If you want to see something else, then put another feature request into that field. Right. I'm going to delete everything else for now. And we're going to have one input type equals submit here at the end. That should be it. Let me just see what that looks like. Right. Do you want to, I mean, that it looks a bit like crap, really, but I guess it works. So we're talking about graphics and CSS, we can also do that, but just need to keep it short, kind of. So do you want to support this format? Put in an email, amount, and a feature request. You can hit send, and that's pretty much it. So the form for now is fine, pretty much. Actually, let me just make it a tiny bit nice and also put the name in here. Feature request in here. Right. And maybe not make it like this. It's a bit aggressive. So just say, welcome to the transparent Stripe integration. Something like that, right? As I can see at the moment, by the way, no questions. I'm going to take that. And I'm just going to continue writing some code then. Now we have that. A quick thing, what I want to do is, now we need to do some scaffolding. So essentially in our, we need a new, let me just, by the way, if you can't see, because the screen is really big, then let me know, and my face is covering what you see in the screen. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to have a new homepage. Right, the old one is redirected to the /checkout page for now. And the new homepage at the moment doesn't do anything. It just returns the index template. Right, let's reload the classes. Let's actually see if that worked. When I go to localhost 8080, welcome to the transparent string Stripe integration email, right, amount, and the feature request. That actually looks quite nice so far, submit. So now what we need to do is we need to hook this stuff up. Hooking it up means for now, I'm just going to create I'm going to create a new form. Let me just do it like this. We're going to have probably want to have a checkout form. So we need a backing bean for that form, essentially, right? So we're going to end up with an amount. We're going to have a feature request, we said, and we're going to have an email. Something like that. And in pure Spring MVC, in pure MVC, I don't know how to say it. In German, you would say Manier. In pure MVC ways, you need to add this checkout form to the page. So just an empty checkout form, right? Like so. And then when you go to the template again, there's actually a very couple of cool things that IntelliJ IDEA offers you to work with ThymeLeaf together, right? Because in here, you can simply now say, well, this form here goes to action, right, to slash. It is backed by an object. The object is called checkout form, right? I get auto completion. I can actually switch back and forth between my template and my Java class, like so. And now we need to do some scaffolding. And to ask Marcin, I hope I got that name right. Marcin, why not use Lombok to reduce boilerplate? Yes, we could very much choose to use Lombok. I have no good reason at the moment not to use it. I know there's some strong opinions on Lombok. Some people hate it, some people use it. For now, I just didn't want to spend some time to set up Lombok, even though that's done quickly. But you could essentially, sure, you can use it. Now, what we have here is actually, I don't need these IDs here, because we're going to go th field. And what we're going to do is, this is going to be email. This is going to be, and this is all auto-completed. So what I'm essentially doing is, I'm not really writing a test now or anything, but what I'm doing is, I'm hoping that IntelliJ is smart enough to give me the right auto-completions, and so that I don't have any typos in here. I don't see any errors here at the top of the page. So I'm pretty certain that at the moment, my form looks fine, and I need a method post in here as well. All right, let's see if my page do not show this dialog again. Let me show if my page still opens up. Right, it does. So we have the form kind of hooked up. I'm just seeing that Peter said he doesn't like to use use Lombok. Now, which brings me kind of to one of the themes of this stream. So essentially, I've been part of quite a fair amount of development teams over my past consulting career. And in every team, there was a ton of discussions going on, a ton of about, can we use Lombok, can we not use Lombok, how do we structure our packages, essentially about everything. And now, at the moment, I'm pretty laid back about most options. So for me, going with JavaScript frameworks is fine, going with plain Spring MVC and HTML is fine. Using Lombok is actually fine, so I didn't have too many issues with Lombok in the past. I also think that actually records will wipe out a lot of things that Lombok is being used for. So I'm pretty neutral. That's my current perspective. All right. We have our payment form, which is just, we now did the getting part of our payment form, and we also need to do the post part. So I want to be able to post that form. It should ideally be validated also, and then if it is successful, if validation was successful, then I want to see that checkout form, the checkout form we had previously, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new endpoint. We're going to create a new post mapping. This is actually going to be our checkout. So this down here we'll have to take care of in a second, right? Now, let me just quickly think. What we do is we're going to post in that checkout form. So we're going to send the checkout form to this post endpoint. And we're going to need some validation. I want to validate all these form fields so that you have to specify an amount, that you have to specify a feature request and your email address. Actually, what I know is, what I was missing is that you, in older Spring Boot versions, that validation was working automatically. In newer ones, you have to add a dependency for it. And the dependency you have to add for it is start validation. And now the big search begins. Let me see. Spring Boot starts a validation. We're going to take the one from the dependency management, right? So we're going to add that, and that gives us bean validation. So when I'm going to start adding annotations now on my checkout form, we need that dependency basically. Let me just quickly do that. We're going to have not null. We're going to say minimum. I don't know, minimum. If someone wants to, if you want to support this thingy, minimum, let's say $4, whatever, and then up to the maximum. We want to see not null feature request, not null. Actually, yeah, email should be an email, a valid one. We're gonna say max. The feature request should not be more than I don't know, 200. Let's say 200 characters should be enough to just write me, hello, I want to see this and that. So that's a pretty simple checkout form for now. Back into our controller. Checkout form, we need something else. And this is something that I stumbled upon 20 million times actually. Validation in Spring MVC only works if you put in the binding result as a method parameter, and you have to put the binding result in the right spot. So if you put the binding result as the last parameter, the validation won't work, which is pretty sucky if you spend hours and hours finding out why validation doesn't work. So yeah, just take it from me that you need to do it like this. And we're gonna do, if the binding result has some errors, then I want to return the index template again. And otherwise I want to return the checkout template. And we're not gonna need this anymore. Very simple, very simple method. I just noticed something, and I just noticed that I deleted my Stripe public key from the checkout page, which would mean it wouldn't work anymore. Right. If you think I have forgotten something so far, then please let me know. I'm just trying to type along as I think, and we're going to see if we're going to run into some errors in a second. I'm just double checking what I have. I have my post mapping. I have a checkout. Well, I can make it a model attribute, so it's available right in the template. We're going to see about that. Binding result, the model, add attributes, try public key, return checkout, return index. Looks pretty much fine. What we don't have yet, though, is error messages, which is which we have to put in somehow. So I'm just going to make it very simple. I'm going to put in if, and now let me see if my ThymeLeaf knowledge is still up to speed. If we have fields, right? Fields and helper method, if we have an error, has errors on the field email. Then there's another method, another helper tag, th errors. A lot of scaffolding today. So this is what I find maybe the most boring part about it is going about, plumbing together all these scaffolding basically. So we're going to have an error message for the amount. And we're going to have an error message for the feature request. And actually, let's do some really dirty, quick and dirty CSS inline. Please don't kill me for it. I just want to make the paragraph red, like so. So anytime we have an error message, we're going to see a red paragraph with hopefully the corresponding error message, really. Let's give that a try in a very manual way. So I want to see this work actually. So I'm just going to put that in here. I'm just going to submit the form. Please fill out this field. Yeah, that's true. Actually, we have our, let's put 2 in here. I want to see Spring Security. Submit. Right, that didn't work. Let me just try and reload, actually, maybe. I have the impression that sometimes... What am I saying? What am I missing? I'm missing a very simple thing. I want my checkout form to be valid, right? So this is hopefully something that I forgot to trigger the validation. Let's see if that works. Localhost 8080. Let's try the whole thing again. 2 feature request. This is it. Now let me try and restart, or otherwise you guys have to help me out, telling me what I'm missing. But I'm thinking I might be missing the, let's see. Right. It was actually just a, a restart missing, because sometimes I think the hot reload doesn't pick up the new dependencies, like the Spring Boot starter validation dependency. But now you can see, well, the validation is actually missing. Must be greater than or equal to 4, must be less than or equal to 200. This is nonsensical at the moment. We're going to fix that. We have an email which worked properly. And now for the size, actually, let me just double check our form here. We're just going to go, this should be not null, the feature request. And it should be, let's say you have to enter 5 characters, something between 5 and 200, like so. This should, let me see, min equals 5, max equals 200. A lot of talking, just a tiny quick, a tiny check. From Rick Peel, should we do a redirect to checkout to follow the post redirect get pattern and to avoid duplicate form submissions? Yes, we could do so very much. Just in this case, I don't think it matters too much because you will be redirected to a new payment form. I have no good answer to that at the moment, I have to admit. But I'll try to get into that the next episode, actually. Right. We have our checkout form. This actually, let me just try that again. And you can see it's a bit rougher today because, again, I didn't really practice too much for this episode, but that's the way I want to keep it, just seeing how it works in real life, that not everything is fluid and I have to restart and that there's some errors, so it's not always perfect from the get-go. So localhost 8080, let's try that again. Let's try Marco Bela. I want to submit $10 or whatever, and I want to see JavaScript covered. Submit. We get taken to the page. Yes. And we have the email address field here, which we don't need anymore. And then we can simply pay. That is pretty cool so far already. So let's see. We need to delete the email address field. And we need to somehow put the data from the form submission into the Stripe JavaScript. So let's see how that works. But first, with the simple things in life. We said on the checkout page, we don't need the email address anymore. Right? We just deleted the field, that's fine. And then I'm gonna do something somewhat dirty. It's not optimal yet, just yet. But as you can see, is here we put in the Stripe public key essentially, right? And as a JavaScript variable. And we can do the same thing with the other stuff, literally. So we could have the amount, put in the amount in here. And I'm just going to split it up because I actually want to clean it up in the next episodes. But for now, we're just going to say we need the amount. Actually, let's just try the amount for now, how that will work. So we're going to put in the amount into that checkout page. When I go to my client JS JavaScript, that was obviously the wrong file. Let's open up the real one. Client.js. I just referenced the amount here. So the amount comes from the checkout HTML page, and I'm just going to reference that here, which sends it to my create payment intent controller, right? So that's all we need to do. And that basically, by the way, is already everything that we need to do. Apart from one thing, we also need to put some validation on that controller. Which brings us to a couple of other interesting questions. So can we have maybe the same, could we maybe reuse the same DTO and form and whatnot? Which brings us to the question of, should we not do this test driven? So should I maybe just write some mock MVC tests for now? And maybe I'm just going to write a mock MVC test for this controller in a second. But again, if you want to see more tests covered, then we could spend the whole next episode entirely on tests, right? But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here into my DTO that I copy and pasted in the last episode. And as you can see, it still has items here, which is actually crap. So we want an amount in here. The amount is there, and we also put our feature request in here. I'm going to tell you in a second why. But we're going to make it one after another. And just here now, there's some duplication going on, and we need to think about, is there a better way than just duplicating now? I'm just going to have a look at my checkout form, right? If I'm just going to duplicate everything that's inside here, it feels a bit dirty for now, but I just want to see a quick result, right? The checkout form, the feature request, like so. This works fine. So we have the amount in here, $4, $5, $10, $20, whatever. The feature request comes in here. And then in our payment controller, we finally need to do one thing. We need to say, well, it's not going to be 15 in here. It's going to be create payment, get amount. So this is how we finally route the custom amount to Stripe. A quick breather for myself. I'm just going to have a quick look at the question that Alex P wrote. Maybe we should apply a max for the amount as well if we don't go for a select input, since we don't want to make mistakes when donating. Oops, haha. Right. We can also put in a max amount there. I mean, I'm always happy about the max amount, but don't worry. Actually, we don't. I think we don't need to properly do that, because we're also going to display the amount. Let me just quickly change that. We're going to display the amount on the page. So it's not that you're going to be, the amount is going to be here, right? So there's going to be a number in here before you do the actual payment, right? And I can see the amount is highlighted in red, which means we haven't yet put the amount in my model. So we're going to say model attribute, amount, checkout form, get amount for now. I'm not just going to put up the whole, I could put up actually the checkout form. Yes, I'm going to go with the single attribute here for now, even though it's a bit duplicated. I'm going to maybe explain later why. But a ton of confusion. We did all that. I had a look at the chat. I think we can actually give it a go and see if I missed something in doing all that now, in coding all that. Because that was already, again, a lot. Let's have a look. So my application is still booting up. Right. I'm going to go to localhost 8080. I'm going to go marco@marcobila.com. The amount, let's say 15. And I want to see Spring Security, right? Spring Security, something like that. Submit. You will be billed $15, so that actually worked. Now let me just try and redo that, because now I'm going to put in 17. So you can see that, well, if you hit the pay button, you will be billed $70. Now I'm going to put in that, that fake number that Stripe gives me, like so. I'm just going to pay. And then hopefully I'm going to get a message, and the message says payment was successful. But the way it looks like at the moment, it doesn't say the payment was successful. Let's see what the issue is. The validation failed. Create payment intent. Throws field error, reject the value null, feature request. Aha. Absolutely correct. I made a mistake, and that is actually, it's actually good that this happened. I was taking a bit of too much. I only wanted to get the custom amount working, but what I did is I already copy and pasted the feature request here, annotation in here, which was a bit too much. We're going to talk about feature requests in a second, but for now I just want to see the amount work on the second create payment intent call. Now let's actually give that a try again, because I'm pretty sure then afterwards it works. Right. marco@marcobela.com. I hope my application is just rebooted. I hope I hit recompile. 17. This is it, right? You will build $17. Let's see if that works correctly. Right, today you can see that actually looks fine. Let's do the payment. That doesn't look like expected. Let's see if we get an error message. And I was thinking, what happens? I don't have the application booted up anymore. So maybe I need to slow down a bit. No, the application is here, right? The log is empty. Let's start with a clean slate again. Let me just double check what I did. And maybe you also already saw the mistake I made, if I made a mistake. And we're going to double check everything again slowly. Right. So we have the checkout page. The checkout page gets the amount. We set the amount in our controller, right? Which gets posted in and gets validated from our checkout form. The yes, the checkout form, that is fine. Which gets put in here, right? The call, however, is being made from the client.js file to create payment intent. Let me just double check that again. Create payment intent has a request body, valid create payment. That looks fine. Not null for the amount, minimum 4. That looks fine. The feature request, yeah, whatever we want to see at the moment. That looks fine as well. Now let's give it another try. Let's run the payment application and let's pray and hope that things are working out correctly. Localhost 8080. Let's give it another try. And if that doesn't work now, this is Spring Security. Let's see. I'm going to clean everything up. Right. We have the new page. In that, I know what the issue is actually on that page, I think. Let's see. The create payment response, there's a client secret which is being returned. That looks fine. And I think I know what the problem is. Let me just pay. So there's not much happening here, right, at the moment. I should have gone to the console and seen the error. That's what I should have done already a long time ago. Can I read property value of null? Let's see what that error actually is. And you can see the email. The email is missing. Right, so actually our code was all working fine, but the problem was the JavaScript, because we deleted the email field. I didn't have a look at the errors and at my console here. I was just panicking and thinking, oh, what is happening if nothing works out correctly? But now let's actually figure this out. And let's go to our client.js. Somewhere inside here we had, right. We had, because the user wants to get an email once he does the Stripe payment, right? So document get element by ID email dot value is something that we need an email field basically. And actually we don't need an email field. What we can do is the same thing, we're just going to go email here, right? We're going to set the email in our checkout page. Email like so. just looking at the chat, don't you also need that Stripe tool for the localhost webhooks? Yes, Peter, we would need the for the webhook, we would need it, but I don't care about the webhook for now because already in the front end, I see if the payment was successful, and I can go into the Stripe dashboard, and that's fine for me. And then in the next, a bit later, we're going to have a look at the webhook and the testing of the webhook and the database insertion of the webhook and all that kind of stuff. So yes, you're right. But for now, for this test, we don't actually need it. Email. I want to put the email there. And let's do it like so. At the moment, checkout form, get email. Right. I shouldn't have done it like so. Actually, I should have just used the checkout form because it's in the view anyway. But all right, let's see what happens if it works with the email. Localhost 8080. And already it gets a bit boring to fill this out. So I would have a couple of options. Do some more test-driven development. I could also have like a hook, a JavaScript plugin, which helps me fill out this field, these fields with something. So that's also something we should have probably a look at in the future. If you hit this button, right? Now let's see what happens. The console, pay. If something bad happens, payment succeeded. See the result page in your Stripe dashboard. I'm super happy that this actually worked. So opening up the result dashboard, you can see I just got $50, 50 test dollars, 40 euros, something like that, with a fee and with the credit card test data, and that in the past I already received quite a few other payments. These are the ones from some testing and also from the last episode. But that seemed to work. We could put in our $50 into our form, submit it to Stripe. We didn't use too much JavaScript. In fact, we didn't change any of the JavaScript, just a tiny bit. Put the it's mainly Spring MVC based. We have some validation going on. We had a tiny couple of hiccups, but everything so far seemed to work as expected, and I'm happy with that. Now let me just do one more thing. We have the email, and this is Stripe API specific. So at the moment, this payment is anonymous in Stripe. So if you did 5 payments, I wouldn't even know who that payment is for. I'm sending an email to Stripe, but that email is only being used that Stripe sends you an email that you just paid $50. If I wanted Stripe to create an account where basically can see the email and then see all the payments by the email, I have to put the email into another field as well. And also I want to put your feature request as a metadata on the payment for now. So you're gonna be able to see that feature request. Actually, you're gonna see it inside the Stripe dashboard, and then later on, when we get the webhook, we can extract the feature request from that webhook and save it into our database, right? So just quickly, that means we need to have a look at the Stripe API actually. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the client.js file again. And there's one JavaScript function which we call Stripe confirm card payment, right? And in here we just set this email that Stripe sent an email to, and also the payment methods, the card from that card field, right? And we need to find the correct fields to set the email to. So where else do we need to set the email to? And we also need to find out how do we set the metadata, right? And what I'm going to do is I find the Stripe API sometimes a bit tricky to navigate actually. So I'm just going to have a look. I'm going to put in Stripe confirm card payment into Google, and then you get a ton of. Well, you get a page basically where you kind of already have to know what you're looking for-ish, right? So let me tell you what I mean. Here on the right, you can see Stripe confirm card payment, payment methods, card, billing details. So it seems to be that if I want to set a name and maybe even an email, I need to have a deeper look into the payment method object. So I can see here, well, yeah, data, right? There's a payment method object, so I can open it up, the payment method object, which brings me to another page where you can see that you have these billing details, and then I would have a look at, let's see if billing details has actually address. No, it has an email. So right, so that seems to be it. And I did that quickly now in this stream, but it actually took me a while to find out the correct field to where do we have to set the email, so that Stripe actually creates some sort of a customer record for the payment, right? So billing details, email, it is. Let's just try that. We're going to add some billing actually wrong. It's on the payment method, billing details, right? Email, we're just going to set the email again. Like so. This should work. We're going to see it in a second when we submit the payment. And as for metadata, it's the same thing actually. We need to figure out where do we need to set the metadata. And I'm just going to quickly take a tiny break for the question, because Mohammed said the Stripe documentation is a lot better. And you're absolutely right. The Stripe documentation is a lot better. I still find it sometimes a bit hard to navigate around. It's still a lot better than many other payment integration documentations. I have built a couple of payment integrations with various providers in the past, and Stripe is definitely the best. It's definitely the best. Yeah. So kudos to Stripe. And by the way, also the API, and that you have the JavaScript and that field where you can put in the credit card details. They do a great job at helping developers. Now with the metadata, the interesting thing is you can see, well, Stripe has, so the payment method object has some metadata here, right? So you seem to be able to set like a map of metadata on your payment method here. But interestingly enough, from what I tried out, this doesn't properly work in the payment process when you do it at that stage. Where you actually have to put it is you have to put it when you create the payment intent, right? So you set the metadata already with the payment intent, so a step earlier, and then it will show up later on in your Stripe dashboard. So let's see what we can do here. Payment intent was up here. We have our feature request. I'm just going to call it like so. Feature request, feature request, feature request. I'm going to do the same trick again. Request, right? It's a simple JavaScript variable now. I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. We're going to have a look at better ways in the next sessions, right? So var feature request. We're going to make that simple. Var feature request equals feature request. And we again are going to add that down here with yet another call. Ooh, I can feel the scolding already. Get feature request. Right, we're going to put that in here in the checkout form. That's fine. And just to double check again, I think I commented out in the payment controller. I commented out the not null, right? Like so. So we're gonna try that. Reload the project and see if what we did essentially works. Localhost 8080, marcobila.com, amount 49, Spring Security. I'm putting in Spring Security way too often, so please, we don't have to talk about Spring Security. So just gonna submit that, 49. Gonna put that in, gonna pay. The payment worked. Let's have a look at that payment. Right, And now you can already see there's a couple of interesting things happening here. So I have another payment, 49. I'm just hopefully using different numbers so you can see these are different payments, right? So that payment worked. You can see the payment method now has an owner email address. So already Stripe has linked it to my email address, that payment method, that credit card, right? So passing the email address worked correctly. And then we have no metadata at the moment. Why do we have no metadata at the moment? Let me think about it. Metadata, right? I'm stupid. Why do we not have metadata? We have no metadata because we went to my payment controller where we pass in the feature request, but we don't put it into the Stripe call. So we're just going to go put metadata here, feature request, right? It's all a bunch of data mangling where we just forward data from the front end to our server forwards it to Stripe, yeah, right? So we're just going to put it in here, put metadata, feature request, create payment, get feature request, right? This should actually work. And now if we do it again, then we should be able to see my tabs are opening up. 51, spring, right? One last time. And you can already see it's already cumbersome and bothersome to fill out the form all the time and to have to do that manually. And the question is, isn't there a better way? Well, and I guess we need to figure that out. So we're just going to hit the payment button here, go to Stripe, the payment dashboard, right? Scroll down a tiny bit. And now you can see the metadata is here, feature request, Spring, it's all there. And this, by the way, I don't know if you folks watching are happy, but what we essentially did now in 45 minutes, we didn't test it, so I didn't write any automated tests, which is something that we absolutely should soon do. We should write some mock MVC tests. Where we can see that the validation is working. We should do all of that. But in 45 minutes, what we managed to do is we hooked up the custom amount in here without changing too much code or writing too much code. We sending the owner email address of the payment method to Stripe, and we also send in the metadata to the. We will also put the metadata for now on the Stripe request. Because the whole payment flow is asynchronous. And the question is, if I didn't put the feature request now on the Stripe payment, which is kind of at the moment, this might seem like an odd place. Why do we need to put it on the Stripe payment? For now, I wanted to have an easy way that you do the payment with Stripe, and then Stripe sends the webhook, and then we can get the metadata out of the webhook. So it's kind of abusing the metadata of the webhook. So we don't have the client to send in the feature request to my server. I have to hold it in memory till the payment is finished. Then I have to hook up these two. So I have to hook the feature request with the payment. I wanted to avoid doing all of that, yeah, which we could have also done and which we will actually have to do in the future once we make our payment flow a bit more wizardy, and as soon as something else should happen after the payment. So maybe go to a product page, to a thank you page, to a welcome page and whatnot, and not just stay on the same page. Right. That was already a lot. 50 minutes. Whew. Let's see. We have that. And now the question is, what I wanted to do is, and I'm not quite sure if I can make it, because essentially we only have 10 minutes left to get started with the database stuff. Let me just think about how we can pull it off. We need to deploy this application. So I guess we're going to need a couple of minutes. I want to redeploy this application. I want to put it onto the server so you can play with it, see that it's actually working. And this is going to take us roughly 5 minutes. And then I also maybe want to think about, maybe I want to just get started with the database stuff and then have another session, not just in a month's time, but maybe next week or in 2 weeks and whatever, I just want to get started, and I'm going to do the database stuff for now 10 minutes, right? And we're going to have a look at how far I get in 10 minutes. I know you want to see the database, and I will get started with the database, but I'm just going to cut it short in 10 minutes, deploy the application, and then we have to continue with the database stuff in the next episode, right? So, database. There's a couple of, let's say, interesting things to watch out for. So what frameworks do we use? What database do we use? Tensun just said, maybe just a quick and dirty H2 implementation. That is what we're going to aim for, actually, a quick and dirty H2 implementation. On production, I have a MySQL database available. So we need to make sure that we have the question. We need to write SQL scripts, create table scripts that work for H2 or work for MySQL, which is not going to be a problem. We're going to need to figure out what database technology do we use. I am now, after 10 years or whatever, working with JP and Hibernate. When I start out with this kind of stuff, I like nowadays to go with Spring Data, JDBC, or Juke. I personally try to avoid Hibernate as long as I can. That doesn't mean, by the way, not that you freak out. I don't like to work with it, but I want to keep things simple. And in this case now, where I'm expecting, we have a couple of very simple insert statements, a very simple database scheme, tables and whatnot. I just don't need all the magic. I don't want entity managers. I don't want a proper session or a proper entity manager rather. And I want all the additional features. I just want to add some data to a database, insert it, select it, and be done with it. So that's why I'm in new projects now. I like to go with a very lightweight Spring Data JDBC option, because it's some sort of a very simple ORM, and it works quite nicely. Now, there's a couple of things we need to do. And first of all, what I like to do is, by the way, I like to start out with the database schema. So years ago, I always like to start out with the database, with the Java classes, and created the schema out of the Java classes and whatnot. Then at some point, I got my ass up to learn some more SQL, get into the detail of SQL. And since then, I'm really somewhat comfortable with SQL, and I like to go with just plain SQL. What I like to do is, for now, is I like to create a DB migration folder, because what we're going to do is, essentially, for now, we're going to add Flyway to the application. Flyway, Liquibase, popular options to get schema migrations, basically. I'm just going to go with Flyway, because, but actually, I find Liquibase to be a good option, but we can talk about all of this stuff for ages and ages and ages later on. But now, Flyway, I need to write some migration scripts, and I'm just going to go first with a simple create table statement. And I'm going to have a look at if that table statement works in IntelliJ. I'm just going to open up an H2 database, just simply seeing if everything is working as expected. And then we're going to hook up everything else that is that we need to do. So I'm just going to create a SQL script. We're going to call it initial setup. What we're also going to do is we're just going to, in IntelliJ, wow, because my window my font size is so big. Let's see what I can make out of this window. I want a quick in-memory database. I have the impression I'm missing all these other fields that are usually there, but let's see if that actually worked. I don't think that. Let's see, plus H2 database. This is, I've done this 20 times, and I always do it the same time. You have to click add, and then this works. So I'm just going to go with a quick in-memory database. All of this doesn't matter. Test connection, right? This obviously works. And we're going to create a table. Now, the question is, we could also, by the way, Marco, we could also put it in file mode. Yeah, that is also absolutely valid. For now, I just want to do some quick testing, if my create table statement actually works. I don't care too much about the database. And also, in production, I would not like to deploy straight away to an H2 database. I would like, if possible, to go to a MySQL database immediately. Now, create table. What I essentially want to save is payments. So it opens up a whole range of discussions, and that's why actually we're just going to do that and then have to push it back to the next episode or to the discussion section, because I have had so many discussions about plural table names, singular table names, lowercase table names, uppercase table names. So many people arguing about this kind of stuff. I can tell you what I personally like to do. I like to have lowercase plural table names. Yeah, that's what the DBAs hammered into my head, to make the table names plural. But I also know that Spring Data JDBC has, and Spring Boot have, you need to write a fair amount of custom configuration code if you want to pull this off with the lowercase table names, which I want to avoid also until the next session, right? But for now, what we're going to have is let's say we have an int ID, so we're going to have an int ID auto increment to make it MySQL compatible, primary key, right? We're going to have we can obviously save the amount that the user put in. We have, most importantly, the payment intent ID, right? So Stripe sends us a string. I'm just going to put it to I don't know, I would have to look it up, 64 characters, I think, or even more so. Where that identifies a payment intent on the Stripe side. So I want to save that. I want to see from Stripe, hey, I got a successful payment with that payment intent ID with this specific amount, and with let's say a feature request, which is also a varchar 255 for now, or 200 did we say, right? So we're just going to put it like so. Now, the question is, and that is a bit taking it away from what we had, what we saw in the last episode. What actually can happen is in these webhooks that you get the same event multiple times, right? So it could be that you get a payment intent success message one too many times. The question is, what do we do about idempotency, right? So how can we make sure that we only save one of these in the database? And a very simple way to do that for now is to just put a unique constraint on the payment intent ID. And as soon as one thread inserts the payment intent ID successfully, commits it, then it's in a database. And if you have many other multiple events coming in with the same payment intent ID, then there will be an exception, like a duplicate key exception, which you can simply ignore. It's a pattern that what we used a lot over the last couple of years, that you make sure to use these database constraints, unique constraints, especially in use cases like these. You just make sure that your code ignores the exception, and that's how we handle idempotency for now. Now let me just quickly see if that create table statement actually worked. Syntax error in create table statement. What am I missing? Let's see. The varchar 200. There's a syntax error. Hello. Hopefully you can still. I was just on the other page. Expected varchar 200. Feature request int varchar 200. Expected. So now I've been saying before. I've been saying, hey. No, actually that were so okay. I didn't. It looks like I didn't fully select the whole thingy, right? So I was wondering what I did wrong here. select star from payments. So the table got created. I was thinking, what did I now do wrong? But no, that actually worked perfectly fine. So this is a statement we can work with. The select star we actually don't want in our initial setup file. Hold on a second. Let me just copy that back to our initial setup SQL file, like so. And now I have my first my first SQL file, which Flyway, we have to add Flyway to the project. Flyway will execute. Then we would need to add Spring Data JDBC to the project, create our model, which maps to this payments table, right? We have to make sure that the MySQL driver is also on the class path for production and whatnot. So we have to do a fair amount of stuff, which would take us another 20 minutes or so, which is why I need to cut it short this time. I just saw the question from Tensun, why put the amount here but not the email? Actually, I also want to put the email there. You're absolutely right. I just want to quickly put the email there for now. So I'm just going to, we have another varchar here, right? You can also put the email here. Which brings us to another topic, that the data is in the Stripe dashboard, but at some point what I would like to do is develop this application into some more of an application, have like a tiny admin dashboard where you can see the payments of people, and it would be nice to have the data locally instead of having to do Stripe requests all the time to fetch some data. Yes. So we're going to put that data here as well. Right. Actually, let me just quickly double check. I think we don't have, in the POM XML file, we don't have Flyway added or anything like that, right? So it's not going to be executing anything. This should be fine, DB migration. And I think, to be honest, to be fair, sorry about cutting this short, but if you want to, so this is a tiny, it's basically a big teaser. If you want to see more payment stuff or more database stuff and Spring Data JDBC stuff, or even JPA stuff, then let me know. Put it, you can submit the form in a second, and just let me know, and we're going to cover that in our next session. But for now, I actually do think, even though we haven't written any tests yet, and I feel kind of bad about that fact, I think it is time to deploy our application. At least we can build our application, right? And I'm just going to do it very simple. I'm just going to take the jar file again, upload it to the server. Also very manual. There's no Kubernetes. There's no advanced stuff inside. It's just simply me uploading with SSH or SCP rather, a file to a server and executing it and running it, right? So that kind of worked. Then let me show the trick again. Basically, I'm using WSL, Ubuntu under Windows. Users, Mount C user screencasts, idea projects, Stripe payments, right? Then we're going to have targets here. We have our Stripe payments jar here. What I'm going to do now is actually, let me just quickly go to SSH Live so I can demonstrate what we have here. So I'm just going to kill the old application. That's pretty old school. So I'm just going to kill that process. If I now go to, so that you actually believe me, if I go to live.marcobilla.com, you're just going to get a bad gateway. That is what is expected, right? I'm going to copy the file to live.marcobilla.com. I told you already about in the last episode, I have this folder structure in most of my projects, var www live java, like so. So we're just going to copy that jar onto the server. And as you can see, by the way, we're still on the same version. We have 0.0.1 snapshot. We also have to think about versioning. Are we going to do with very simple versioning? We're just going to increase a counter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 10. Are we going to work with snapshots? How are we going to do that? But again, that's something that needs to be figured out, right? Now, hopefully this kind of worked. Let me just quickly go back to my server. Right to Java. I can see there's my Stripe payments snapshots.jar from now. You can see, right? And now again, we're just going to do, we're going to run that file like so. So there's nothing really that's hopefully surprising. The application booted up. And when I now go to live.marcobila.com, I see my Stripe integration page. And if you go to live.marcobila.com now, you should also see that page. And just to say it again, if you liked anything of what you saw, you don't have to put the submit button. I don't want to be aggressive about it. So feel free to enjoy the screencast as it was. And if you found it had some value, you can fill out the form, hit submit, and that will also be much appreciated. But I'm at the moment noticing I am super happy, super excited that this actually worked. It is live. We deployed to production. We had a couple of hiccups along the way. But in 60 minutes from adding these, just changing around these forms, making it a two-step process, letting you choose the amount, sending some data to Stripe, it's actually something that I'm pretty happy with and pretty proud of for now. I hope you enjoyed that. Now let me switch back to just me. If you have any questions, I'm just going to stick around for whatever, a couple minutes. If you have any questions about anything you saw, if you want to say, hey, dude, you did it all wrong. Hey, that is super dirty the way you did it, even though that's an MVP. You didn't do any tests. You had a field injection there. Let me know. We can talk about anything you'd like, that you'd like to see. I'm always happy to discuss all these choices. But just while maybe some questions come in, at the beginning of my career, I was pretty focused on, always having the right way, making everything perfect, showing no mistakes, using the perfect framework, using the perfect approach. And then, as I mentioned already before, is that there's always discussions in every team. Every team does it differently. Some people like to go TDD. Some people don't like to do it. They like to write tests afterwards, which is also fine. There's so many different ways of writing software. And what I would like to you folks to take away is that what I'm doing here is I'm going from nothing to a deployable application you can use in 1.5 hours, or almost like, let's say 2 hours maybe, which is pretty damn cool. Usually in 2 hours, a lot of teams argue about nothing. They argue about Lombok, like 10 people, and there's nothing basically created of value. And so for a plain MVC, for a new project where I'm just trying to get a grip of what is happening here, does it even make sense? Are you people actually going to use that page? Because it could be that none of you is going to use that page, and the stream is not going to work, and no one likes what he's seeing, and then I can throw away my code. And then I don't need to have written, all these tests and all this stuff. So at the very beginning, when you start out with something, this is what I would do, and I can't even fake it. I wouldn't. What I did in these 2 episodes, I wouldn't do test run first, for example, because I really needed to find out if you guys like watching me code and if you like this format and whatnot. And I'd rather deploy something to live, to production in 2 hours than spend way too much time with arguing about specific technologies or frameworks or stuff like that. Right. What else do we have? Let me just quickly have a look at the chat window. Any idea when you would create Git videos? So as for Git, actually I have a couple of Git videos on my YouTube channel, a couple of years older Git videos, if you want to know how to merge or rebase and whatnot. So far I didn't push the code into a public repo, which I very likely will do so in the next couple of days or so. Yeah. Cool to see that someone skips the test in the initial phases. Yes. So yeah, Peter. Yes, I like in the initial phases. I like to skip the test. That's true. But I already felt a bit bad with not having any tests at all. Now to see if my controllers work, but we can fix that in the next. We can fix that in the next couple of episodes. Will you submit this live? David has. Actually, David. I don't want to submit it live because I don't. Because it's my own credit card account. Basically, I'm gonna send myself money. If you like the show, if you like what you saw, you can simply take the form, put in your email amount, feature request, just make it $4 if you think it's worth half a Big Mac in Germany, basically, and then you can see if that actually works, right? Yeah. All good to things go by 3. Looking forward to see some tests in the 3rd episode. Yes. Shout out to Philip, basically, who wrote a ton about testing, who has a great course on testing. You can check it out. I think I put it into the description of the video. If you want to get into testing, and I'm sure he also has to say some more about that, about my test being written properly and whatnot, then yes, let's wait for the next episode and see if I get scolded. Right. Then yes, Gerardo. Yes, I also like. I tell you what I thought. So I'm watching these cooking videos, right? And I actually nowadays like cooking videos where the chefs are not prepared, where they just do something and they mess stuff up. And now I thought for this episode, so I just quickly had a look at, in preparation for this talk, I had a look at some concepts and thought, yeah, this is how I could do it. And then I just thought, I'm just going to wing it and see how it turns out, because this is actually real life. This is how I would do it in real life. And this is the problems I would stumble upon and fix. And it's just real life, right? Manish, do we write unit tests at the end of the code base? Unit tests at the end of the code base, I'm not quite sure what that means at the end of the code base. Marku, I would like to have info how to handle long-running transactions. So, long-running transactions, the thing is, in general, the answer is you shouldn't have long-running transactions. And this is actually a problem that we're going to run in. This Stripe example is such a great example of a really full-blown application, because it has so many intricacies that you have to figure out. Essentially, when you get the Stripe events, Stripe needs you to return an OK in like 200 milliseconds, or else they're going to start sending you the event again and again and again because they think you didn't get the request. So actually, when you save the event, or when you do any event processing, it has to be done super fast. So what this essentially means is you probably save the event that comes from Stripe and then asynchronously work off the event. So I wouldn't advise to have like long-running transactions like 10 minutes or whatever. Instead, you have to have a short transaction, then have some worker which works off whatever is being sent into the system. Now, plans of having streaming platforms, aka Kafka, Apache Spark. So the thing is, if you think that Kafka makes sense in this application, which it doesn't at the moment, then I will put it in. We can obviously put it in if there's a use case for it. But I'm really also open for use case driven development. So I just don't want to hammer stuff into the system because it sounds fancy. I want to have a use case for it. And actually, my plan is, if you guys, for example, want to see deployments. Upgraded deployments, there's very simple ways how you can do live rolling updating deployments with no downtime, with just a couple of shell scripts, and really just very simple technology that has been around for ages. We can obviously also go the other way and Dockerize everything and hit Kubernetes on top and go with the AWS route, but I guess it depends on what you folks want to see. Now, last but not least, last question, I think. Do you write unit tests at the end of development all at once? So again, unit tests, maybe we're going to talk about that topic in the next episode because I like to write unit tests where it makes sense. I'd like to have more integration tests actually. I want to make sure that all my integrations in these business applications are working correctly, even though they take longer. I'm not a big fan of unit testing and mocking my entire application out, but we can, because that spawns a lot of discussion, I'm quite sure. We can talk about that, I guess, in the next episode or whatnot. What point of the next episode? I don't know yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to have a look at what my schedule allows me to do, how many talks I have to give next month and whatnot. And then we're going to see so let's say from anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks is going to be the next point. And Marco, so the thing is, list of entities, say 10,000. That's another question. So if you have 10,000, 100,000 entities, like batch processing, whatever, there's other ways around that. But again, it doesn't quickly fit into the discussion of this episode. I'm sorry, but you can send me an email with your specific questions, and I'll try to answer it. All right. I hope I had all these questions answered. I think we're in time, 1 hour, 20 minutes almost. I can feel my voice already a bit scratchy. I guess thank you, folks, for watching. Thank you for the support. And I was excited. I'm happy that everything is working as expected. And I hope to see you in the stream next time. Have a good evening, a good day, a good morning, wherever you are in the world. Take care, guys. Bye.